Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the sound of a crowd gathering just beyond your door, boots scuffing against cobblestones, voices rising like a restless tide. There is no mistaking what they are waiting for. They are waiting for you. You are not a knight, not a noble, not even a respected tradesman. You are something else, something necessary, yet despised. The job no one admits they need but everyone demands. You are the executioner. The year is somewhere in the late Middle Ages. The air smells of wood smoke, ale, and something sharper, iron. Not the clean metallic tang of a blacksmith's forge, but the heavy, lingering scent of blood, sweat, and fear. Your house is on the edge of town, near the tanner's yard, where no one important dares to live. The church bells toll, but they do not ring for you. The townsfolk cross themselves when they see you pass, muttering prayers, spitting into the dust to ward off your shadow. Yet when the moment comes, when judgment must be carried out, when justice must be seen, there is only one person they call, and that person is you. Hey, it's me again. Welcome back to Dreaming Through Ages. Tonight, I'm going to put you in one of the strangest, darkest jobs of the Middle Ages. No soft candlelit monastery, no glittering banquet halls. This is the other side of medieval life. Before we go on, do me a favor. Tap that like button if you enjoy these deep, immersive journeys into history. It helps more than you think. And drop a comment below. Tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight. I love reading those, from cozy apartments in big cities to farmhouses in the quiet countryside. This channel has somehow gathered us all into one strange little community of history dreamers. We're all. Now dim the lights, pull your blanket close, and ask yourself, could you survive as a medieval executioner? The crowd is waiting. You hear them murmur, laugh, shout. For them, this is theater. For you, it is work. Your tools are ready, the sword gleaming though nicked at the edge, the axe heavy in your calloused hands, the rope coiled like a serpent, the wheel, its spokes already stained. You do not carry them proudly. They are not symbols of honor, but instruments of necessity. The condemned waits too. Sometimes they rage, sometimes they beg, sometimes they go silent, as if already halfway gone. Their family might be near, weeping or cursing your name, but no one looks at you with kindness. You are not the hero nor the villain. You are the hand that ends. And yet without you, the wheel of justice would stop turning. It's not only the condemned who fear you, everyone does. In the market, the butcher refuses to hand you meat directly. He drops it onto the counter so your hands never touch. Children are told not to play near your house. Priests hesitate when you step into church, as though your presence might stain the holy ground. Your family bears the same burden. Your wife is whispered about, your children avoided. They inherit your shadow. They live with the same suspicion, the same distance. But here's the strange truth. While the people avoid you, they also rely on you. They need their justice clean, visible, public, and only you can deliver it. So let me ask you, could you bear it? Could you live with the stares, the whispers, the loneliness? Could you wake each day knowing that the town despises you, yet will cheer when you raise the blade? Remember, you can't just quit. Executioners aren't volunteers. They are appointed, often chosen from criminals who escape the noose by agreeing to wield it. You don't step into this role because you want to. You step into it because the town has chosen you, because they've decided your hands should carry the weight no one else will touch. Would you survive it, or would you break under its silence? Tonight, in this story, we'll walk through the life of the medieval executioner. We'll feel the weight of the axe in our hands, the roar of the crowd in our ears, the loneliness of a life lived at the edge of society. We'll see the rituals of punishment, the mistakes that haunt forever, the strange privileges and payments that came with the role. We'll explore not only how you might survive, but whether survival would cost you your soul. So settle in. Let the drums of the crowd fade into your dreams. Imagine the scaffold before you, the rope, the blade, the waiting silence. Because tonight, you are the executioner. You live at the edge of the village, not in the bustling square, not near the market stalls or the church bells, but in a crooked house at the very outskirts, where the fields give way to woods and the road bends away from town. Your doorframe leans, your roof is patched with straw and clay, and the shutters rattle with every wind. People pass by quickly when they walk this road. Some glance at your house, then look away. Others cross themselves. A few even spit in the dirt. You are the executioner. When you step into town, silence follows you. At the tavern, mugs lower, voices hush. The innkeeper greets you politely, but never warmly. No one wants to sit at your table. If you sit too close, chairs scrape and legs shuffle as they find another place. They do not touch you if they can help it. And yet, when justice is needed, when punishment must be delivered, they call your name. You are despised, but you are necessary. In church, the priest nods to you, but there is no pew reserved for your family. People edge away from your wife when she kneels to pray. Children whisper cruel words to your children. They are marked not by their own sins, but by yours. They are the sons and daughters of the man who cuts off heads. When you walk through the market, vendors sell to you because they must, but their smiles are forced, their hands quick to pull away from yours. You are both part of the community and apart from it, needed but not welcomed. Yet, strange as it sounds, your position carries privilege too. The council pays you wages, sometimes in coin, sometimes in food, sometimes in land at the town's edge. You are exempt from certain taxes. You are permitted to handle goods others will not touch, clothes stripped from the condemned, even their bodies. Sometimes you sell the rope used for hangings or the ashes of burned heretics, for superstition clings to your work as tightly as fear. It is a trade, a grim craft, and like any trade it has its tools, the heavy axe, the long sword, the rope, the stake, the wheel. You must know them all and keep them sharp, clean, ready. For to falter is not only to fail, it is to curse yourself with shame, to make the crowd howl, to risk your own neck. At night, when the village grows quiet, you sit by the fire with your thoughts. The faces of the condemned visit you in the flames. Some weep, some curse, some whisper prayers. Their voices linger long after their bodies are gone. You drink deeply, hoping to dull the memory, but the memories always return. The burden is not just the blood on your hands. It is the weight of being forever outside, forever other. You are the hand of justice, but never its heart. And yet, you survive. So let me ask you, could you live on the edge of town, shunned by neighbors, despised by the very people you serve? Could you raise children knowing they will inherit not only your name but your stigma? Could you walk into the square, hood drawn low, blade in hand, knowing that no matter how clean your strike, you will always be marked? This is the executioner's burden, and this is only the beginning. Your mornings begin in silence. While the village stirs with the ringing of bells and the bustle of merchants, you rise to the sound of nothing but crows. The fields beyond your house glisten with dew, but no neighbors greet you, no children wave. Even the animals seem wary of you. Dogs bristle, horses pull their reins, cats slink away as though sensing the mark you carry. You are not entirely shunned. Some do approach, but always cautiously. A farmer might leave a sack of grain at your gate as part of your pay. A guard might come by with news of an upcoming punishment. A priest may deliver blessings, though not with the same warmth he gives others. Transactions happen at arm's length, voices clipped, eyes avoiding yours. You belong to the town, yet you are never of it. The contradictions of your position grow sharper with each day. On one hand, you are treated as unclean, cursed, dangerous. Yet on the other, you are given certain privileges. When disputes arise, your word carries weight. No one wishes to challenge the man who wields the axe. When goods are abandoned, shoes of the condemned, belts, scraps of clothing, they are yours to take. Some executioners even sold these grim leftovers in secret, their families relying on the market of death to survive. And yet, you know each coin you touch carries whispers. The butcher mutters to his apprentice when you hand him money. The cloth seller sighs as she takes your wife's payment. No matter what you bring, no matter how you pay, it always feels like blood money. Children are not spared the burden. Your sons and daughters carry your shadow like a second skin. At school, others mock them. Murderer's child, they say, pushing them aside. Teachers eye them warily, as though cruelty might be inherited. Even when they marry, the name follows them. The stigma is not yours alone, it is your family's inheritance. At night, when you return home, your house feels like a prison of its own. Your wife may wait, her eyes tired, her hands rough from work, her words quiet because what is there to say? She too has been spat at in the streets, denied warmth in the market, avoided in the church pews. She shares your loneliness, though she never chose it. And then there are the nights after an execution. You sit by the fire, the axe resting by the wall, and you wonder if your hands are clean. You scrub them with water, sometimes even with sand or ash, but you know the stain is deeper than skin. The condemned linger in your thoughts. Some faces blur, others remain sharp, etched forever in your memory. The young thief, the old heretic, the mother accused of witchcraft. Their last words echo, whether whispered prayers or bitter curses. Do they haunt you? Do they accuse you? Or do they simply stare, silent, as you try to close your eyes? The burden is not just social, it is spiritual. Priests tell you that you are an instrument of justice, that you carry out the will of law, perhaps even the will of God. But the people do not see you that way. To them, you are tainted, cursed, an omen of death. Even your tools carry superstition. Some believe the axe is cursed, that touching it will bring misfortune. Others believe the rope of a hanged man can cure illness or bring luck in gambling. And so, strangely, you may find yourself bargaining, selling scraps of rope, bits of cloth, turning superstition into survival. But each sale leaves you wondering, do they see you as a man or simply as a vessel of death? And yet, in this strange existence, you find resilience. You learn to live with silence, to endure stares, to take pride in precision. For your duty is not only to kill, it is to kill cleanly. A botched execution shames not only the condemned, but you. One swing, one strike, one swift act. That is your craft. To falter is to fail. So you practice. You sharpen your blade. You study the balance of the axe, the weight of the sword. You rehearse, not for glory, but to avoid disgrace. Because in a world where everyone watches, your mistakes will echo louder than your successes. And as the night falls, the fire dies, and your house creaks in the wind, you ask yourself the same question once more. Could you bear this life, isolated, marked, haunted, yet essential? Could you carry the burden of being both the hand of justice and the outcast of society? This is your world, and until your own final day, it will never let you go. Imagine waking each day with a name that is not your own, not father, not husband, not neighbor. No matter what you do, where you go, or how kindly you speak, to the town you are always the same thing, the executioner. That identity clings to you like smoke. It seeps into every corner of your life. If you buy bread, people whisper. If you take your child to market, other children stare. If you walk through the square, people make way, not out of respect, but out of dread. Even when you do nothing, even when your hands are clean, the stain is always there. The role is hereditary more often than not. Many executioners were born into it, sons inheriting the axe from their fathers, whether they wish to or not. Imagine that, your child who once held your hand with innocence, now bound by your reputation. A boy who dreamed of being a craftsman, a knight, a scholar, forced instead into the family trade. His life decided before he could speak it. To outsiders, he will never be a child. He will always be the next executioner. Some families embraced it, turning execution into a dark craft honed over generations. Others carried it like a curse, dreading the moment the boy was old enough to wear the hood. Legends and superstitions wrapped themselves around you. Some believed your touch carried disease. Others believed you could heal, your hands possessing strange powers because they had dealt death. Mothers might secretly bring sick children to your door, begging for cures they dared not ask for publicly. Some even believed an executioner could charm away fever by passing a hand over the child's brow. The same hand that ended lives might also save them. How twisted must it feel to be both healer and killer in the eyes of the world? You live with the knowledge that everyone needs you, but no one wants you. Towns cannot exist without justice, and justice, at least in this age, means punishment, blood, death. Without you, law loses its teeth. Yet when the work is done, when the heads are severed and the crowd disperses, you are left alone. People wipe their hands clean of you, as though you were the blood itself. Even those in power keep their distance. The lord or magistrate pays your wage, but avoids your company. They summon you when needed, dismiss you when finished. To them, you are not a man, you are a tool. And in quiet moments you wonder, what about your own soul? Priests assure you that you are the hand of justice, that you serve the law, that you keep order. But the scriptures are not so clear. The faces of the condemned haunt your prayers. When you kneel, do you ask forgiveness for them or for yourself? Do you dare to ask at all? At night, the burden weighs heaviest. The house is silent, the fire dim. You hear the wind in the rafters, the creak of old wood, the distant barking of dogs, and in that silence, your thoughts press close. The townsfolk may forget the names of those you killed. You do not. You remember every face. Some pleaded for mercy, others spat curses, some were resigned, eyes closed as though already gone. Others met your gaze, their eyes locking with yours in a final silent question. Why you? And you have no answer. Could you endure it? Could you live a life where every kindness is outweighed by suspicion, every word you speak measured against silence, every step you take shadowed by the knowledge that you are both servant and pariah? This is the burden of the executioner, not the weight of the axe, but the weight of a life lived always on the edge, of the town, of the law, of humanity itself. There are ways to endure. There have to be. Without them, the burden of the hood, the axe, and the whispers would crush you completely. Ali is one comfort. Many executioners drink, not for merriment, but for silence. The burn of strong spirits dulls the memory, blurs the faces, softens the noise that follows them home from the scaffold. Too much, of course, brings its own shame. But sometimes shame is lighter than the weight of endless remembrance. Rituals help too. Some executioners sharpen their blades obsessively, the scrape of whetstone against iron becoming a kind of meditation. Others wash their hands 3, 4, 5 times after each execution, as if soap and water could cleanse more than flesh. Some mutter prayers before each stroke, asking forgiveness not for themselves, but for the condemned. And then there are the superstitions. Certain cloaks worn only on execution days, special gloves, coins slipped into pockets for luck. You cling to these small habits because when life is ruled by death, even scraps of belief can feel like shields. Family becomes both burden and anchor. Your wife bears the same mark as you, shunned, whispered about, eyed with suspicion. Yet she stands beside you through isolation, through stares, through silences heavy with things better left unsaid. Your children may inherit your craft, or they may run from it, but for now they carry your name, and that binds you together. In the evenings, after the square has emptied and the fires are low, there are rare moments of tenderness, a child's laughter, a wife's hand on yours, the quiet rhythm of a meal shared in a house far from the world. These moments do not erase the burden, but they soften it. And strangely, in certain corners of society, there is respect, not from the villagers who spit at your feet, but from those in power. Magistrates who sign death warrants know they need your steady hand. Lords, kings, and councils rely on you, even if they never invite you to their tables. They pay you, they protect you, because without you, their justice has no teeth. In some towns, criminals fear your name more than the judges. To them, you are the true end of law, the one who decides if their final breath is quick or agonizing. It is a twisted form of respect, but respect nonetheless. Still, When you lie awake at night, staring at the beams of your ceiling, you know these fragments are not enough to lift the weight. The loneliness, the suspicion, the isolation, they remain. Every face you've seen, every body you've touched, every whisper you've heard, they are stitched into your very being. Could you endure a lifetime of that? Could you cope not with one execution, but with dozens, perhaps hundreds? Could you bear to walk through markets where no one meets your eye? To sit in churches where no one kneels beside you? To raise children who inherit not only your blood, but your shadow? This is what survival means for a medieval executioner. Not only surviving the blade, but surviving yourself. We've walked together through the loneliness of the executioner's life, his isolation, his burden. Now let's step onto the scaffold itself, because this is where the world truly sees him. This is where fear, justice, and performance meet. Welcome, my friend, to Chapter 2. Picture it, a town square packed tight with bodies. Villagers pressed shoulder to shoulder, the smell of sweat and bread crusts mingling with something sharper. Anticipation. The condemned stands trembling, chains rattling against wrists and ankles. Mothers clutch their children. Young men climb onto barrels for a better view. Vendors shout over the crowd, selling roasted nuts and sour wine. And there you are, climbing the wooden steps of the scaffold, the hood low over your face, the axe heavy in your hand. The murmurs ripple as you appear. Some cheer, some spit, some cross themselves. Everyone is waiting for you. Medieval executions were not secret. They were theater, public, ritualized, and carefully staged. The law was not satisfied with punishment done in silence. It had to be visible. It had to be remembered. And so executions became ceremonies, with their own order, their own rhythm, their own choreography of fear. The condemned was brought forward, sometimes dragged in chains, sometimes pushed onto a cart that rattled over cobblestones. Their crimes were read aloud by a herald or a priest, the words echoing into the square. Prayers might follow, curses too. The crowd watched every flicker of emotion, the trembling hands, the bowed head, the defiant glare. And then, you, the executioner, stepped into the center of it all. The ritual varied by method. If it was the axe, you sharpened it carefully, the sound of steel scraping against stone, a signal to all. If it was the rope, you tied the knot with deliberate precision, adjusting the length so death would come swiftly, or slowly if the punishment required it. If it was the stake, you prepared the wood, the tinder, the torch. Each tool, each method carried its own weight, its own rules, and each one placed you at the heart of the ritual. Because in that moment, justice was not the Lord, not the priest, not the council, it was you. So let's walk through them together. The blade, the rope, the fire, the wheel, each one brutal, each one unforgettable. Could you stand there, hood over your face, steady hands gripping your tools, while the world roared for death? That is the ritual. That is the executioner's stage. And in this chapter, we'll step into it fully. The scaffold is not just wood and nails. It is a stage. And when you step upon it, you step into a performance that everyone expects you to deliver flawlessly. The condemned has been dragged forward, the priest mutters final prayers, and the herald proclaims the crime in a voice that rings across the square. The people listen, some nodding, some jeering, some already hungry for the sight to come. The law has spoken, and now it is your hand that must finish the sentence. But how? Each method of execution carries its own ritual, its own weight, its own story. Tonight, let's walk through them together. The simplest, perhaps the most iconic, the beheading. The condemned kneels, the crowd grows quiet, and you stand above them, blade in hand. The axe is heavy, solid, demanding strength and precision. The sword is lighter, swifter, demanding skill. Which one you wield depends on where you are, what tradition your town follows, and how much dignity is afforded to the one about to die. A noble might receive the sword, swift, clean, a mark of respect. A thief, a heretic, or a murderer might kneel before the axe, head pressed against the block, the wood scarred by countless strikes before. You must strike once, twice at most. Any more, and the crowd will roar in fury. The family of the condemned will curse your name, and your reputation will rot. A botched beheading is shameful. Heads do not always part easily. Bones resist, flesh twists, nerves cling stubbornly to life. That is why you practice. That is why you sharpen. That is why your arm must never tremble. Imagine it, the silence before the blow, the collective breath of hundreds of onlookers, the weight of expectation pressing on your shoulders. You swing, the blade cuts through air, through flesh, through bone. A thud, a gasp, a cheer. Justice is done, or so they say. Hanging is a slower death, and one more common for ordinary criminals. The condemned is led to the gallows, the rope dangling like a serpent in the air. The crowd jostles for a view, the murmurs swelling. Some make the sign of the cross, others laugh. You tie the noose with deliberate precision, adjusting the knot, judging the length of the rope. Too short, and the condemned will strangle slowly, kicking and clawing for minutes as their face turns blue. Too long, and the head may tear away from the body in a grotesque spectacle. The art of the hangman lies in the calculation. The right drop, the right knot, the right end. The condemned climbs the ladder or stands upon the cart. You place the rope around their neck. Their eyes dart, their lips tremble. Some pray, some spit, some beg. And then you give the signal. The cart rolls, the ladder tips, the rope tightens, the body jerks, legs flailing, a groan torn from the throat. The crowd gasps, some horrified, some thrilled. Slowly the body grows still. You watch carefully, ensuring the deed is done. And then, when silence falls, you cut the rope, letting the corpse slump into the dust. Few punishments inspire more dread than the breaking wheel. Here, death is not swift. The condemned is tied to a great wooden wheel, their limbs stretched, their face pale with terror. The crowd presses forward, eager and afraid. You raise a heavy iron bar. With steady rhythm, you bring it down upon arms, legs, ribs. Bones shatter, screams tear through the air. The wheel creaks beneath the weight. Sometimes the condemned dies quickly, their body collapsing under the blows. Sometimes they linger, moaning, eyes rolling back as the pain overwhelms them. The wheel is not just execution. It is torture. It is spectacle designed to terrify, to remind the people what awaits those who defy the law. And you, the executioner, must wield the iron without hesitation, each blow calculated, each strike deliberate. For heretics, witches, or crimes seen as an affront not only to men, but to God, there is the stake. The condemned is bound to wood, bundles of straw stacked high around their feet. The crowd gathers in fearful silence, because this is not merely punishment, it is purification by flame. You light the torch, the fire crackles, smoke curls upward, the condemned coughs, their voice carrying above the crowd, sometimes screaming, sometimes praying, sometimes defiantly cursing their accusers. The heat grows, the flames roar, the smell of burning flesh fills the air. The people watch, some weeping, some chanting prayers, some cheering as though the fire itself were justice made visible. For you, the executioner, it is another duty. You do not cheer, you do not pray, you watch, you wait, you ensure the fire consumes as intended. And then, when the ashes scatter, you step away. No matter the method, one element never changes: the crowd. They are the true heart of the ritual. They demand the spectacle. They cry for justice. They cheer for your precision. They curse your mistakes. They are both witness and judge. Their reaction defines whether the execution is seen as justice served or justice mocked. You are not only killing, you are performing. Every swing of the axe, every knot of the rope, every torch lit is part of the theater. And if you falter, if you stumble, if you show hesitation, the crowd will remember. And so you stand on the scaffold, the hood heavy on your shoulders, the tools of death at your side. You are despised, you are feared, you are necessary. And you know that tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, there will always be another name, another face, another ritual of death waiting for your hand. Could you endure it? Could you stand before the crowd, steady, precise, certain, while the world demanded blood? This is the burden of the executioner. This is the ritual of death. The first time you swing the axe, your hands tremble. The crowd roars, the condemned collapses, and your knees nearly buckle under the weight of it. But the second time, the trembling is less. By the 10th time, it is gone, and by the 50th, it is routine. This is the dark truth of your craft. Repetition breeds familiarity, and familiarity breeds numbness. You stop seeing faces, and instead you see tasks. Tie the knot, sharpen the blade, light the torch. A checklist of death performed step by step until the humanity drains from it. But at night, when silence settles, the numbness slips away. That is when the faces return. Some go quietly. They kneel, pray, accept. Others resist, thrashing, screaming, cursing you and all who watch. You remember the ones who looked into your eyes at the last moment, a pleading glance that pierced through the hood you wore. For an instant, they reminded you that you were not killing a symbol, not punishing a crime, but ending a human life. And in that moment you wonder, am I justice, or am I simply death given a mask? The people shape the ritual as much as you do. They cheer when the axe falls cleanly. They groan when the rope jerks too long. They gasp when the wheel cracks bones. They whisper when the fire rises too slowly. They are your silent judges, weighing not only the condemned, but your skill as well. The cruelest truth? Sometimes they are entertained. Execution is not just punishment, it is spectacle. The crowd craves drama. They jeer, they laugh, they argue about whether the stroke was clean. In their eyes, you are part of the show. Not a man, not even a servant of law, but an actor performing the grim theater of justice. And so you learn to play the part. You step onto the scaffold with steady movements. You swing the axe with flourish. You raise your chin as though the hood is a crown. If you stumble, you are shamed. If you perform, you are cheered. But does the cheering comfort you, or does it hollow you out further? The repetition of killing leaves scars no one sees. Some executioners become hard, cruel, embracing the fear they inspire. They swagger through markets, daring others to look away. They drink deeply, laugh loudly, pretend they are untouched. Others break. They grow quiet, withdrawn, their hands trembling when no one is watching. Some are haunted by dreams, faces returning night after night, voices screaming, prayers echoing, curses clinging like smoke. Some turn to religion, begging forgiveness. Others abandon faith entirely, convinced no God could love the hand that swings the axe. The burden is not only the lives you end, but the life you must carry after. And so you develop defenses. You tell yourself you are not killing, but serving. The law commands, you obey. The guilt is not yours. It belongs to the judge, the priest, the council. You are the tool, not the decision. You tell yourself it is mercy, a clean blow, a swift rope, a fire lit hot enough to burn fast. Better in your hands than in another's clumsy grip. Better your axe than endless torture. And yet deep down you know these are excuses. Necessary ones, but excuses all the same. You wonder, if you were not the executioner, could you stand in the crowd? Could you clap when the blade fell, laugh when the rope tightened, cheer as the fire consumed? Or would you turn away? Perhaps this is the bitterest irony. Those who despise you, those who spit at you in the market, are the same who cheer most loudly in the square. And so you stand, hood heavy, axe ready, bound to your role by duty, by stigma, by survival. This is not just a job, it is a ritual. It is death as performance, and you are its leading actor. We've walked the scaffold, we've felt the weight of the blade, and we've seen death turned into ritual. But now let's step away from the square. Let's walk back with the executioner, through the crooked streets, past the market stalls that fall silent at his approach, to the lonely house at the edge of town. Because tonight, in Chapter 3, we're not talking about death in public. We're talking about life in private, about what it means to carry this burden home. Imagine being the child of the executioner. You never chose the hood, never touched the axe, and yet the shadow clings to you as if stitched into your very skin. At school, the other children whisper. They laugh behind your back, sometimes to your face. Killer's son, they call you. Hangman's daughter. The name is a curse, a brand you cannot escape. Even in church, where all are meant to be equal, the separation is clear. Your family kneels apart. The priest's blessing hovers differently over your bowed heads. The congregation edges away, as though sin itself might be contagious. And what of the wife? She marries not just a man, but his burden. She may have once been admired, courted, loved, but now she is the executioner's wife. The women at the well gossip when she arrives. The baker offers her bread, but avoids her eyes. The market women let silence fall when she passes. She wears the same cloak of suspicion that her husband does, though she never lifted the axe herself. At home, though, the story is different. The executioner is no longer the hooded figure on the scaffold. He is a father, a husband, a man weary of the stairs. He sits by the fire, rubbing his tired hands, listening to the laughter of children or the sigh of his wife. It is in these walls at the edge of the village that a different kind of life unfolds. There are moments of warmth, shared meals, laughter from children too young to understand their father's work, stories whispered by candlelight. But there are also shadows, arguments born of shame, silences too heavy to break, nights when the weight of death sits between husband and wife, like an unwelcome guest. And yet, the family survives. They must. For in this strange position, there is both curse and privilege. The executioner's family may be shunned, but they are also protected. Few dare to cross them openly. Their house may stand alone, but it is not attacked. Their children may be mocked, but rarely are they harmed. Fear shields as much as it isolates. This is the paradox of the executioner's family. Despised yet untouchable. Outcast yet essential. So let me ask you, as we open this new chapter, could you raise children under that shadow? Could you comfort a wife who shares your stigma? Could you build a home in the silence at the edge of the world, knowing that no matter how warm the hearth, the town will never see you as their equal? This is the family life of the executioner. And in the next moments, we'll step fully inside that house, where survival means more than just earning coin. It means holding on to love, dignity, and hope in the face of a world that would rather you disappear. Your house stands apart on the very edge of the village. A crooked fence marks its boundary, though few ever cross it. Inside, the hearth burns, the table is laid, the smell of bread or stew fills the air. From the outside, it looks like any other home, but to the town, it is not. To them, this is the house of the executioner. Your wife did not choose this life. Perhaps she grew up in the same village, once admired for her beauty or skill at weaving. Perhaps she came from elsewhere, marrying you for survival or through arrangement. Either way, the day she became your wife, she inherited your shadow. At the market, women whisper when she approaches. They lower their voices, their laughter turning sharp, their eyes cutting. They sell to her, yes, but reluctantly, their hands quick, their greetings short. At church, she feels the pew beside her grow mysteriously empty, as though invisible walls separate her from the congregation. And yet, she carries herself with quiet resilience. She tends the garden, kneads bread, mends clothes, raises children. Within the home, she is the heart, steadying the man who comes back from the scaffold with blood on his hands, holding together the fragile threads of family life. Without her, the burden would break you completely. For the children, the curse arrives early. At school, the lessons are the same: letters, prayers, a bit of arithmetic. But the treatment is not. Other children snicker, shove, taunt, hangman's brat, murderer's blood. Games end when they arrive. Friendships vanish at whispers. Even the teacher watches them differently, a subtle distance that the children cannot name but can always feel. On feast days when the village gathers, your children stand at the edge of the games, never chosen, never welcomed. Some run home in tears, asking why they must bear a name they never earned. And you, their father, have no answer. You know only that this is the price of your trade, a price your family pays as much as you do. And yet sometimes the same stigma becomes protection. No bully pushes too far, no rival raises a hand. Fear shields them even as it isolates them. No one wants to be cursed by the executioner's wrath, not even his child. Inside the house, however, life feels different. Here you are not the hooded figure with the axe. You are a husband and father. You sit by the fire with a cup of ale, listening to your wife hum as she mends. You laugh when your children tell stories, even when their games mimic the world outside, sometimes too eerily. You break bread at the table, you tell tales of saints and kings. You stroke the dog that curls by your chair. For a moment, the burden fades. For a moment, you are simply a man, not a shadow. But even within these walls, the work seeps in. The axe leans by the door. The rope hangs in the shed. The smell of smoke, the stain of blood, the memory of screams. They do not stay behind in the square. They follow you home, seeping into your dreams, into your silences. Sometimes your wife notices when you stare too long into the fire. Sometimes your children fall quiet when your eyes cloud. The house is warm, but the shadow always lingers. Despite the stigma, there are moments when the family benefits from the role. Your wages may be better than a poor laborer's. Your family has land, food, clothes, things peasants often lack. People may shun you, but they do not cheat you. No merchant dares to cross the executioner's wife. No child dares to steal from the executioner's son. Fear protects where friendship cannot. And sometimes the very tools of your trade bring coin. A scrap of rope, a lock of hair, a drop of blood. These things are sought by those who believe in charms and cures. It is a grim business, but a business nonetheless. Your family eats because of it. So let me ask you, could you raise children knowing they would always be mocked for your work? Could you love a wife who carries your shame as her own? Could you build a home where laughter lives side by side with the memory of screams? This is the family life of the executioner. Not joyless, not hopeless, but shadowed always by the hood, the axe, the rope. And still, the family endures. Because survival is not only about facing the crowd, it is about facing one another, night after night, in a home that is both refuge and prison. The role of executioner was rarely chosen. It was inherited. Father to son, uncle to nephew, cousin to cousin. Families carried the hood and the axe across generations, as though it were both a profession and a curse. Imagine being a boy of 10, watching your father sharpen the axe, polish the sword, tie the knots. You do not play at soldier or merchant like the other children. Your games are darker. You mimic your father's work with sticks and rope, knowing that one day it will not be a game. One day the crowd will call your name and you will walk the scaffold where your father once stood. Could you carry that inheritance? Could you accept a future where your name means death before you've even grown into a man? Marriage for the executioner's family was never simple. Most ordinary villagers would not willingly join their bloodline to yours. Who would want their daughter to be the wife of the hangman? Who would want their son to marry the daughter of a killer? And so, families of executioners often married among themselves. Across towns and regions, executioner dynasties formed, intermarrying, trading, creating bonds only they could understand. If you were born into such a family, your world was small but tightly woven. Other families shunned you, but within this circle, you found belonging. Strange as it seems, these hidden communities carried their own traditions, their own pride. They were marked as outcasts, but together they were a lineage, a brotherhood of shadows. For the children, the burden was double-edged. On one hand, they were feared. No one bullied them too far. No one dared strike them in anger. because who would want the wrath of the hangman's house? On the other hand, they were never free of whispers. They might inherit land, wages, perhaps even a measure of respect, but never innocence. And so some embraced the role, carrying the axe with cold acceptance. Others rebelled, running from their heritage, seeking work as soldiers, laborers, wanderers, any identity other than executioner's son. But no matter how far they went, the name followed. Within the home, though, there was strength. Families marked by death clung fiercely to one another. The world outside might mock them, but inside those walls, they created their own sense of dignity. Children laughed, wives prayed, husbands worked. They ate from the same pot, told stories by the same fire, carried secrets no outsider would ever know. Sometimes, in the quiet of evening, when the firelight flickered and the shadows grew long, there was even pride. Pride that the family endured despite the stigma. Pride that they carried out a role no one else could bear. Pride that they had survived another day, another execution, another season of whispers. So I ask you again, could you bear to raise children knowing their future is already written in your shadow? Could you watch them grow, knowing they will inherit not only your name but your burden? Could you stand proud beside a wife who shares your exile? This is what it meant to be an executioner's family. Not merely a house at the edge of town, but a world apart, where survival was measured not in coins or crops, but in endurance. Everywhere you go, superstition clings to your family like ivy to stone. Some believe your blood is cursed, that to shake your hand is to invite misfortune. Others whisper that your touch carries power, that you can heal sores, ease fevers, or banish nightmares. It is an odd paradox. The same neighbors who spit at you in daylight might sneak to your door at night, begging for a charm, a scrap of rope, a vial of ash from the condemned. They will not admit it in public, but in secret, they treat you like a man who stands halfway between the earthly and the divine. And so your family learns to live with whispers, half fear and half need. You are never fully shunned because superstition binds even those who despise you. Despite your isolation, there is quiet influence in being the hand of justice. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows crossing the executioner is dangerous. Merchants do not overcharge you. Neighbors do not trespass. Quarrels end quickly when your shadow falls across them. Your family carries this aura as well. A son may be mocked, but he is rarely beaten. A wife may be gossiped about, but no one dares to strike her. A daughter may be whispered about, but suitors still approach, cautious, respectful, fearful of the father's hand. It is power born not of love, but of dread, and still it protects. Because society rejects you, executioner families build worlds of their own. Meals are shared with an intensity others might not understand. Jokes are whispered only within your walls. Secrets are guarded fiercely. Love is clung to with desperation because without it, there would be nothing left but the silence of exile. Some families find pride in their endurance. We carry what others cannot, they tell themselves. Others simply endure in bitterness, longing for a life that can never be theirs. But all share the same truth. Survival depends not just on strength, but on unity. For the children, the future is written before they can read it. Sons are groomed to inherit the axe, the rope, the hood. Daughters are raised with the knowledge that their marriage choices are few. Likely another executioner's son, another family shadowed by death. And yet within these limits, bonds form. Dynasties are built. Families of executioners stretch across towns and borders, tied together by their shared fate. You might never belong to the wider community, but you belong to a lineage, a network of others who understand the burden. So again, I ask you, could you live a life where your family is at once despised and feared, cursed and sought, shunned in daylight but visited in secret? Could you raise children who inherit your shadow, knowing their future is bound before it begins? Could you sit by the fire with your wife, clinging to love as the only shield against the world outside? This is the executioner's family life. Not simply exile, not simply survival, but a delicate balance of fear, superstition, hidden pride, and quiet influence. It is a life lived forever on the edge, together in the shadows. We've stood with the executioner in the square, felt the weight of the axe, and walked home with him into the silence of his lonely house. We've seen the family that suffers under his shadow and the rituals that make death a spectacle. But what happens when the executioner fails? Because this job does not forgive mistakes. Imagine the square, packed with villagers, their eyes fixed on you. The condemned kneels, the priest whispers a final blessing, and you raise your axe. The air is heavy, silent, waiting for the blow. You swing, and the head does not fall. The blade bites, but not deep enough. The condemned screams, blood sprays. The crowd gasps in horror. You raise the axe again, desperate, striking once, twice, 3 times before the head finally tumbles. The square erupts, not with cheers, but with outrage. A botched execution. This is the nightmare of every executioner. The moment when your strength fails, your aim slips, or fate itself seems to betray you. The condemned suffers needlessly. The crowd recoils in disgust, and your name is cursed across the town. Could you recover from such shame? Could you walk through the marketplace knowing every whisper is about you, every laugh at your expense? Mistakes are not always bloody. Sometimes the rope snaps, sending the condemned crashing to the ground, still alive. Sometimes the fire smolders instead of roaring, forcing the executioner to feed it as the condemned suffers. Sometimes the wheel cracks in the wrong place, prolonging the agony. Each failure is remembered. Each failure scars your reputation. And the consequences are more than just whispers. A botched execution could stain your career forever. Some executioners were dismissed. Others were punished. And some carried the shame until their dying day. Their names remembered not for their precision, but for their failure. So here, in Chapter 4, we step into the darkest corner of the executioner's life. Not the duty fulfilled, but the duty failed. Because if the scaffold is a stage, then a botched execution is not just tragedy, it is humiliation. And in this world, humiliation is almost as deadly as the axe itself. Every executioner carries the same fear. Not of death, not of blood, but of failure. The scaffold is a stage, and the crowd is not merciful. They may forgive a condemned man his crimes, but they will never forgive the executioner if he falters. Imagine standing before hundreds of eyes, axe raised, sweat sliding down your palms. You swing, hard, clean, confident, yet the blade glances off bone. The condemned screams, thrashes, blood sprays across the block. The crowd erupts, not in triumph but in disgust. Boos, jeers, curses. Some even throw stones. In that instant, you are no longer justice. You are incompetence. The shame is unbearable. The most infamous failures came with the axe. Heads are heavy, necks are thick, and even the strongest arm can misjudge the angle. Some executioners needed 2, 3, even 4 blows. Each extra strike was a public humiliation. Take Mary, Queen of Scots, in 1587. Though later in history than most medieval tales, her end became infamous. The executioner struck once, missed. Struck again, still not enough. Only on the third did her head fall. The crowd horrified, the executioner disgraced. Though he was not punished formally, his name lived forever in shame. For a medieval executioner, a single botched strike could ruin a career. The crowd might demand his dismissal. Priests might condemn his soul. Even his family would bear the whispers. Hanging carried its own risks. A rope too short left the condemned strangling slowly, jerking violently for minutes while the crowd watched in discomfort. A rope too long could snap the neck so hard the head tore away, turning the solemn ritual into grotesque farce. Each mistake reflected not just on the condemned, but on the executioner. People muttered that he lacked skill, that he was cursed, that he was unfit for his post. And in a world where reputation meant survival, such mutters could destroy him. Burnings and wheelings could falter too. Fires that burned too slowly left the condemned shrieking long after the crowd had lost stomach for it. Wheels that broke bones clumsily turned the ritual of terror into awkward brutality. For the executioner, each misstep etched another mark against his skill. The crowd remembered. The council remembered. Even other executioners, in their hidden dynasties, whispered about failures, turning them into warnings for their own sons. Never falter. Never shame yourself before the crowd. The humiliation was not only public. At home, shame followed him like a shadow. His wife endured the gossip. His children heard the taunts sharpen. Your father cannot even kill properly. The family carried the failure as much as the man himself. Some executioners grew bitter, drowning shame in ale, withdrawing from their families. Others grew harsher, striking with fury to prove themselves, determined never to falter again, but the truth was always there. Once your reputation cracked, it never fully healed. So ask yourself, could you face the crowd after botching a death? Could you carry the stares, the whispers, the jeers? Could you walk into the market knowing your failure is a story on every tongue? Could you return home to your children's questions, your wife's weary eyes, your own reflection in the firelight? Because for the medieval executioner, mistakes were not only bloody, they were eternal. Failure is remembered longer than success. A clean strike, a swift drop, a fire that roars, these vanish into the fog of memory. But a botched execution, that becomes a tale whispered in taverns, recorded in chronicles, passed down to children as cautionary stories. Executioners knew this well. Their greatest fear was not just the jeering crowd, but the echo of their mistakes carried into the future. To be remembered not as the hand of justice, but as the butcher who couldn't do his work. That was the true curse. History is filled with examples. A medieval chronicler once wrote of an English executioner who struck 7 times before severing a nobleman's head. By the 4th blow, the crowd was nearly rioting, screaming curses, some even calling for the executioner to be executed himself. The man lived in shame thereafter, his name a stain in every market and alehouse. In Germany, there are tales of hangmen whose ropes snapped mid-drop, forcing the condemned to suffer twice. The crowd roared in outrage, some even rushing the scaffold to try to save the condemned, turning the executioner into a villain before their eyes. And as we already mentioned, Mary, Queen of Scots' execution, though later in time, became legendary as one of the most humiliating botches of all. The failure did not just wound the executioner's reputation, it became part of history itself. But what could an executioner do after such disgrace? Some sought redemption in precision. They practiced obsessively, sharpening blades until they gleamed, rehearsing their strikes, ensuring that no future execution would falter. They turned their shame into fuel, determined to erase memory with flawless performance. Others turned to ritual. They prayed before every execution, asking forgiveness, asking for strength. They carried charms or tokens, wore certain cloaks, tied knots in particular ways. These were not just superstitions. They were shields against the fear of failure. And yet, no matter how precise, how careful, how devout, they always knew the crowd would never forget. For the townsfolk, a botched execution was not simply unpleasant, it was an insult. Justice was meant to be swift, certain, undeniable. A clumsy death felt like injustice, like mockery. Some crowds hurled stones, rotten food, or even rushed the scaffold in fury. In rare cases, executioners themselves had to flee for their lives, shielded by guards from the wrath of their neighbors. Imagine standing before the crowd after such failure, the air thick with curses, the people's eyes burning into you. Could you survive that humiliation? Could you return to the marketplace, to the church, to your own family, knowing that the world would never look at you the same way again? The shame did not die with the executioner. Families bore the mark too. Wives were mocked, children taunted more viciously than before. Other executioners, in their hidden networks, whispered about the failure, using it as a warning. This is what happens when you falter. Learn, or you will be next. In this way, mistakes became more than events. They became legends, warnings etched into history, haunting not only the man who failed, but the generations who followed. So again, ask yourself, will you have the strength to rise after a botched execution, to face the crowd, to face your family, to face yourself in the silence of the night? Or would that failure hollow you, breaking you more surely than any rope, any blade, any wheel? Because in the world of the medieval executioner, success was expected, but failure was never forgotten. We often think of the executioner as cursed, despised, exiled, and all of that is true. But here lies a paradox. The same man who was spat upon in the market was also one of the best paid servants of the law. Yes, the hood came with coin. Executioners were not poor men. Their wages were often higher than a town guard, a craftsman, even some officials. Why? Because no one else wanted the job. To find a man willing to kill and kill again, you had to make it worth his while. Payment came in many forms: coin from the council's chest, food from local farms, even land on the edge of town. Some executioners lived in houses larger than their neighbors, built not on honor, but on blood. And there was more. Executioners were sometimes granted perks from the condemned, clothes stripped from bodies, belts, shoes, even hair and teeth. These were sold, reused, or turned into charms for those superstitious enough to buy them. Death itself became part of the family's income. But money was not the executioner's only reward. Fear itself became a kind of power. No merchant dared cheat the executioner's wife. No debtor delayed his payments. No thief risked stealing from his home. The man who swung the axe was feared enough that even his shadow commanded obedience. In some towns, disputes ended when the executioner walked into the square. His presence was enough. No one wanted to anger the man who might one day decide the clean or clumsy end of their life. This was power, though not the noble kind, not respect, but influence rooted in dread. Executioners often had special rights too. Some were exempt from certain taxes. Some had the privilege of handling goods others would not: lepers, criminals, prostitutes. They lived on the margins, yes, but those margins gave them access to things others avoided. In a strange way, they lived with more freedom than many peasants. Outcasts, yes, but with protections. Shunned, yes, but also untouchable. And so the paradox deepens. The executioner is both exile and authority, hated and needed, cursed and well paid. His children may be mocked, but his purse is fuller than most. His wife may be whispered about, but her table is rarely bare. His name may be despised, but his hand is feared. Could you survive such a life? To be richer than your neighbors, yet poorer in dignity? To have power without respect? To rule through fear while living in silence? This is the executioner's strange balance: payment in coin, power in fear, survival in contradiction. Executioners did not live on wages alone. The job came with side income, much of it born from superstition. The rope used in a hanging was prized as a charm. Gamblers believed it brought luck, women believed it could ease childbirth, and thieves believed it offered protection. So after each hanging, pieces of rope were quietly cut and sold. The same was true for the clothes of the condemned. Once stripped, they were yours by law. Some you sold, some you wore, some you bartered. People might scoff in daylight, but in secret they bought, believing the garments carried strange powers. Ashes from burnings, bones from bodies, even drops of blood, all became commodities. It was a grim market, but one your family relied upon. For as much as society spat at your name, they could not resist their own fear of the supernatural. In some towns, executioners ran small businesses alongside their work. They butchered animals, tanned hides, brewed ale. Why? Because few wanted to trade directly with them. So instead of fighting the stigma, they turned it into survival, carving out niches others avoided. There are records of executioners doubling as knackers, disposing of animal carcasses no one else dared touch. Some ran brothels, their status as outcasts making them appropriate to manage those already shunned. It was strange, twisted, but practical. Your power was not only in the axe, It was in the markets no one else dared enter. Despite being despised, executioners were never ignored by the ruling class. Lords and magistrates knew that, without you, justice lost its teeth. So they paid you well, granted you exemptions, even defended you against mobs. In some cases, executioners were asked to carry out other unpleasant tasks, disposing of diseased animals, cleaning plague pits, even torturing prisoners for confessions. You became the Lord's hand in all things foul. It was degrading, but it gave you leverage. A lord might ignore a peasant's plea, but he could not ignore his executioner. Perhaps the strangest form of payment was fear itself. It followed you everywhere, a cloak heavier than your hood. People lowered their voices when you walked past. Merchants never dared cheat you. Your family was mocked, yes, but never assaulted. And in disputes, your presence carried weight. A quarrel might quiet at your approach. A fight dissolved when you spoke. Even without raising the axe, you held power. Not respect, not love, but influence. And in a world where most peasants were powerless, that was no small thing. So here is the question. Could you live with wealth but no welcome? Could you walk through markets with more coins than your neighbors, yet be treated as if your hands dripped with blood? Could you raise children in finer clothes than others, only for them to be mocked as cursed? Could you accept power that came not from admiration, but from dread? Because this was the executioner's paradox: despised, yet well paid; shunned, yet untouchable; outcast, yet essential. A man whose livelihood was bound not only to justice, but to fear, superstition, and the grim business of death itself. We've walked the lonely road to the edge of the village. We've stood upon the scaffold, felt the weight of the axe, tied the knots of the rope, lit the torches at the stake. We've lived the silence of the executioner's home, heard the whispers that haunt his children, tasted both his wages and his shame. Now at last the question comes back to you. Could you survive? It begins with loneliness. You would rise each morning, not to greetings, but to silence. The town would not welcome you. The market would not embrace you. The church would not seat you among its flock. You would live at the edges, a shadow in human form, needed but never wanted. Could you endure that isolation? Not for a day, not for a week, but for a lifetime? Then comes the work itself, the ritual of death repeated again and again. Each swing of the axe, each tightening of the rope, each fire lit by your hand would etch itself into your memory. Could you carry the faces of the condemned in your mind night after night? Could you silence their voices when they return in your dreams? Could you harden your heart enough to strike cleanly, yet not so hard that you lose yourself completely? And then your wife, your children. They would inherit your shadow, live with your reputation, suffer the whispers of others. They would grow in a house of warmth, yet walk through a world of coldness. Could you raise them, knowing their futures are shaped by your name? Could you bear their tears, their questions, their silent resentment? Of course, there are rewards. Coins heavier than most peasants will ever hold, meat on your table when others go hungry, fear itself working as your shield. Yet what good is power when no one respects you? What good is wealth when no one breaks bread at your table? Could you live with influence born not of admiration, but dread? And always there is the risk of failure. The botched strike, the snapping rope, the smoldering fire. One mistake could undo years of service. One moment could turn the crowd against you, stain your name forever, condemn your children to even deeper shame. Could you survive that humiliation? Could you face yourself after the scaffold turned against you? So here, at the end of the tale, I ask you once more, could you survive as a medieval executioner? Could you endure the isolation, carry the burden, shield your family, taste the power, and risk the shame? It was not a life of glory, nor even one of pure fear. It was something more complicated, a paradox, a curse, a duty that twisted love, faith, and survival into a single heavy chain. And perhaps the truth is this: no one survives it fully. Not the condemned, not the crowd, and not the executioner himself. The day begins before sunrise. The village is still, but you are already awake. The hood lies folded on the table, the axe leaning against the wall, its edge catching faint firelight. You eat bread in silence, listening to the creak of the rafters, the stirring of children still asleep. Your wife does not meet your eyes. She knows what today brings. You step outside. The air is sharp, damp, filled with the distant smell of smoke from early fires. Villagers pass quickly on the road, their eyes sliding away. None greet you, none dare. Already you feel the weight of the day pressing in. Could you carry that silence day after day, year after year? By mid-morning, the guard arrives. They nod curtly, avoid your gaze, and walk with you toward the square. The streets narrow, filling with villagers. Some pretend not to see you, others whisper. A few dare to smirk, hiding behind the safety of the crowd. Ahead, the scaffold waits. Wooden boards darkened with old stains, ropes swaying in the breeze. The condemned already stands there, trembling, chained. The priest murmurs prayers. The crowd thickens, buzzing like hornets. Every step you take toward the scaffold is heavy, not with fear of the condemned, but with the eyes of the living. The herald reads the crime aloud. The crowd roars. Some cheer for justice, others jeer at the condemned. Some simply watch with morbid curiosity. You lift the axe, the sunlight gleams on its edge. All sound seems to hush. You see the condemned's lips move. Prayer, curse, plea, you cannot hear. The moment stretches thin, like glass ready to crack. You breathe once, steady. You swing. The blade falls, the crowd erupts. It is over. But for you, it never ends. When the square empties, when the body is carried away, when the cheers fade into silence, you are left with the echo of the strike. You walk back through the streets, the crowd parting, some sneering, some crossing themselves. Children gape, mothers hush them, men look anywhere but at you. By the time you return home, the silence feels heavier than the scaffold. Your children wait. Some run to you, laughing, too young to understand. Others avoid your eyes, old enough to know. Your wife sets food on the table. The smell of stew fills the room, but your stomach is heavy, the taste flat. You sit in the firelight, staring into the flames. The condemned's face flickers there, burned into memory. Your wife says nothing. Your children laugh in the corner. For a moment, you feel human again. But you know, the world outside your walls will never let you forget. The house grows quiet. The fire dies. You lie awake, listening to the night. Dogs bark in the distance, an owl hoots. The wind rattles the shutters. And then, in your mind, the crowd roars again. The condemned's eyes stare once more. Could you sleep, knowing tomorrow may bring another name, another face, another strike? Could you endure a life where every day repeats the same cycle? Silence, whispers, execution, firelight, ghosts? So here, in this long day of the executioner, the truth emerges. It is not just one strike, one rope, one fire. It is every day, every year, every life. Isolation at dawn, performance at noon, silence at dusk, nightmares at midnight. Could you survive? Truly survive? Or would the weight break you, slowly, silently, until all that remained was the hood, the axe, and the shadow of a man who was once human? When you wear the hood, when you lift the axe, when you tie the rope, you are not only a man, you are the embodiment of justice. The crowd does not cheer for you, they cheer for what you represent. They do not curse you, they curse the weight of law and the inevitability of death. And yet, in the stillness of night, you realize a truth that no priest will speak, no magistrate will admit. Justice is fragile, and you are its most fragile servant. For what is justice but one hand striking another, one life ending at the will of many? What separates you from the condemned? A hood, a blade, a moment of luck? Could you survive the knowledge that in another world, on another scaffold, You might be the one kneeling instead of the one standing. The executioner's greatest burden is not the axe, nor the rope, nor the wheel. It is his own humanity. Every face lingers. Every cry echoes. Every pair of eyes reflects back, not guilt, not innocence, but humanity itself. And that is what you kill, again and again, until the line blurs between victim and executioner, condemned and condemner. Some men harden themselves, building walls around their hearts. Others break, crumbling under the weight of memory. Few escape unchanged, for to deal in death is to be marked by it. Could you carry that humanity without losing your own? Survival for the executioner is a paradox. You live longer than most peasants, your family eats better, your purse is heavier, your name is feared. And yet, inside, survival feels like slow erosion. Your soul is chipped away, one strike at a time until the man beneath the hood grows faint. You are alive, yes, but are you truly living? So what does survival mean? Is it merely breath, coin, and fear? Or is it dignity, love, and belonging? For the executioner, survival is always the former, rarely the latter. Could you accept that trade? Could you choose life stripped of respect, humanity gnawed away piece by piece just to keep breathing? So we return one last time to the scaffold. The crowd gathers, the condemned kneels, the hood is drawn, and you, yes you, stand with axe in hand. The people are watching, the priest is praying, the condemned is waiting. Do you strike cleanly, or do you hesitate? Do you survive the moment, or does the moment consume you? Because perhaps the truth is this: no one survives as the executioner. Not fully, not whole, not without scars. And yet, they endured. They lived in the shadows, carried their burdens, passed their craft to their sons, loved their families in silence, and performed their duty until the end. They survived, if not as men, then as shadows of justice. The question is not whether they could survive. The question is whether you could. And so, my friend, we come to the end of this long journey. You've stood in the square, you've lifted the axe, you've walked the lonely road home, and you've peered into the quiet shadows of the executioner's family. You've tasted both the weight of shame and the strange power that fear provides. For hours now, you've carried the hood, shouldered the blade, endured the whispers. And I wonder, how do you feel? Do you find yourself recoiling from the thought of such a life, grateful that you were born in another time? Or do you surprise yourself by realizing that, perhaps, you could have endured it? That survival, no matter how grim, is possible when necessity demands it. That is the strange power of history. It reflects us back to ourselves. We look at the past and think it distant, alien, brutal. But when we walk close enough, when we stand on the scaffold, when we sit by the fire in the executioner's lonely house, we find pieces of ourselves staring back. Fear, shame, endurance, pride. These are not medieval relics. They are human truths. Before we close, let me pause and thank you. Truly thank you. You've stayed with me through the darkest alleys of medieval life, through the square and the silence, through the weight of death and the questions of survival. Every time you tune in, every time you dim the lights and let these stories carry you towards sleep, you breathe life into this channel. Without you, your ears, your presence, your curiosity, these stories would remain words on a page, shadows in the mind. But with you, they become journeys. So wherever you are tonight, curled up in bed, lying on the couch with headphones, drifting off after a long day, know that I am grateful. You are part of this project, part of this strange experiment where history becomes a lullaby, where the past becomes a mirror, where sleep and storytelling meet. We asked again and again, could you survive? And now, as we close, the question lingers still. Survival as a medieval executioner was not just about swinging the axe. It was about enduring isolation, carrying stigma, feeding a family, balancing fear and power, bearing the shame of failure, and living with ghosts that never left. Survival was not glory, it was endurance. And isn't that the same question we ask ourselves even now, in quieter ways? Could we survive the burdens we didn't choose? Could we carry the roles forced upon us by circumstance, by family, by society? Could we endure loneliness, misunderstanding, judgment? Perhaps the executioner's story, as grim as it is, reminds us that survival is rarely beautiful, but it is always human. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, let the echoes fade, let the axe rest, let the crowd's roar soften into silence, let the hood slip away, leaving only the warmth of the present moment. The executioner's life was heavy, but your pillow need not be. You have survived this journey, and now you deserve rest. Breathe deeply, feel the weight of history slide away. The night is long, the world is quiet, and sleep waits for you with open arms. And now, my friend, I'll turn the question back to you. Where should we travel next? Should we wander into the streets of ancient Rome, sit in the shadow of the Colosseum, and listen to gladiators prepare for death? Should we walk into the chaos of the French Revolution, with its mobs and guillotines? Should we slip quietly into the candlelit halls of a Victorian workhouse, listening to the whispers of the poor? Or shall we take a turn into alternate history, asking what might have been if great moments had turned another way? Tell me in the comments what you want to hear next. I read every suggestion, every thought, every story you share. This channel grows because of you, and I love weaving these journeys together with your voices in mind. If you've enjoyed this story, please do me a small kindness. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you haven't already. These small gestures may seem simple, but they are the lifeblood of this channel. They help others find these stories, they help me continue creating, and they make sure we keep dreaming through the ages together. So as the night deepens and your eyes grow heavy, let me leave you with this thought. The executioner's life was a burden, yes, but also a reminder that survival takes many forms. Sometimes it is noble, sometimes it is dark, sometimes it is quiet and unseen. But survival in all its forms is still survival. And tonight you have survived another day, another story, another journey. May your dreams be lighter than the hood, your rest gentler than the scaffold, your tomorrow brighter than the fire's glow. Good night, my friend. Sleep well. And until next time, keep dreaming through the ages.